and welcome to the easternKicks podcast, a regular magazine programme about East Asian film led by me, Andrew Heskins, founder and grandmaster of easternKicks.com, and James Mudge, our leading writer.
Hey up.
Each episode we'll be taking a look at the latest films, news and festivals, often chatting to filmmakers and stars along the way. Welcome to the latest episode. Once again, we're going to be running through our easternKicks picks for the month, a curated selection of the new and upcoming releases across streaming services and cinemas. But before we get on to all that, we have the important question.
Yes.
What are you drinking this episode, James?
Well, since again, in London, quite missing Scotland and Scottish alcohol, to be precise, as I have been complaining a huge amount about the fact that the only beer which seems to be in the pubs on the taps is IPAs. So, very happy not to have an IPA today. I had to have something Scottish, in fact. McEwen's Champion, 7.3%.
Ooh,
Which you don't really see in Scotland very often. But without getting into a political rant here, it's fair to say that pricing measures are very different in Scotland. They're much harsher, draconian, I would say. So higher strength beers, or proper higher strength beers. This isn't like a Tennent's Super or anything.
Yeah.
It's actually an award-winning one. But this kind of beer is not so common, so I think just even in terms of your beloved like Abbey beers and whatnot and everything, you may struggle a bit north of the wall. So, but yeah, 7.3%, very nice, very
another
nice
reason
beer.
to keep this after all. Well, and I think you win this episode. But in honour of this, this being your last few days,
Yes.
and our last podcast for a while, with you being in London, I've got a bit of London Porter.
Oh, nice!
So
it does look a good dark proper porter.
Dark proper porter.
What's the percent?
It's 5%.
It's okay. It's okay.
Which is acceptable.
Some of the porters, when they get too high a percentage, they get a bit too treacly for my liking. Whereas I can see from here that's got a little not fizz to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah,
very
definitely.
good.
Some of those had some in the past, those 12%ers that are.
Yeah, they're just like porridge.
Cheeky porridge. So let's get on to looking at what there is on the popular streamers.
Yes, sure. I'll mention one from Shudder first. Not that it's not new; it's been there for a few months. But that was before we started really doing these EK picks. Bloodflower, a Malaysian one for 2022, and I've just reviewed it for the site. I came across, gave it a watch, but it's very good. I really enjoyed it. I mean, to be fair, I seem to have enjoyed it more than other people did. Not that there was any bad reviews for it, but it's like an exorcism film.
Yeah.
But a Western, like a Western style exorcism film done over in Malaysia with sort of obviously Islam being religion. Yeah. So it's not like sometimes when we see the Gong Cha films, the black magic films, or like the Indonesian folk horror films, which we both really like. They're very much just like that's an Indonesian film. Everything about it is Indonesian. It's not like a Indonesian take on a Western genre, whereas Bloodflower to me felt a lot more like it was kind of it's wholly culturally Malaysian, but at the same time it is an exorcism film in the sense of an exorcism film, like with a young boy who comes from a family who have sort of like spiritual healing and exorcism powers, and he doesn't want his power, but then it keeps coming back to him. He finds the use for it, and there's a curse and a demon and stuff. But I thought it was very good, and the Bloodflower actually is in it. I mean, it's pretty random. Like the neighbour just owns like a giant room full of exotic plants, and there's a giant Bloodflower, which is a real thing. Look, it is actually a real flower, and it's giant, and it's in the middle, and it doesn't really have much to do with the film, but it is there. So I thought that was just a nice touch. So yes, I would definitely recommend it. You can read my review. The director's Dain a couple of films which I think we both saw, like Bunahan, which was quite controversial.
Well, there was another one, wasn't there? It was
which you've seen. I have Interchange.
Interchange, I thought was quite. It was trying to. I mean, so Dain has kind of roots from Malaysia and from the UK and from London. So I think he's kind of mixed up a lot of these influences before. Interchange, I thought, didn't really work, but it had a lot of sort of weird mystical stuff.
Is that sci-fi?
It's it's sort of more fantasy, really. I guess
because the cover is one of those classic ones where it's like people's faces looking like surprised. So I couldn't just from the poster I couldn't tell actually, but it was a lot of blue and looked like some lightning or something on it. So I thought it might have been sci-fi, but it didn't look like a horror either way.
No, it was. I mean, it was quite weird as I remember. Not massively successful. The other one I think we saw was Duckern, which was the one that I think he shot quite a long time ago, and then he kind of finally finished it off quite recently. Yeah, and released it. I think it was at Five Flavors and Other Festival.
Right. Okay.
Well. It's interesting. This does sound like it's quite a lot more solid and consistent than some of these other films.
Yeah, definitely. Consistent's a right word. Yeah, it's the pacing's a little slow in places, but it is, it all comes together. Put it that way. And it's interesting as well to see. Obviously, Netflix has a lot of the Indonesian ones. Pretty much all the key ones are the Indonesian folk horror. So it's interesting to see, which other Southeast Asian countries they're getting stuff from. I mean, then there could well be another couple of ones hidden on there, which I just haven't delved into enough. Is because sometimes with probably the reason I miss Bloodflower is because it's not a name which really jumps out at you. If you look through Shudder, there's so many films with very similar names which are trying to sound kind of like horror-ish rather than horror. So after a while I skim past a lot of stuff. So I might dive back in. And see if there's any other interesting stuff on there. But yeah, I would recommend Bloodflower.
Cool.
Netflix then? I suppose.
Let's move on to Netflix. Yeah.
First one to mention, we mentioned it last time, but I've seen it now and reviewed it. Badland Hunters.
Yep, with our man
Don
Lee, as he's calling himself now. Yeah, it kind of depends on which platform.
Does he go by Don Lee in Korea though? Is what I don't know the answer to that, because we'll see his name in anything where I see his name written, where there's a chance, like Wikipedia, where there'd be a chance to put it in like the romanicized, whatever the pinyin is for the word for like Korean pinyin is. They always still call him Don Lee, but I don't know if in Korea he's Don Lee. If you know what I mean, if they change his name in Korean characters. Yeah. I don't know that it massively matters, but I should probably stop in reviews putting Don Lee, aka because by now I think everybody just knows him as Don Lee, certainly in the West. So anyway, it's a very good film. I really enjoyed it, surprisingly, given how a lot of these Netflix productions, whether they're the Korean ones or not, are pretty bad. But this is a lot of fun. It's not very long, like an hour and 40 minutes, or just over. Post-apocalyptic brawler. He fights a crocodile at the start, and he just keeps punching people all the way through.
Sounds like his favourite kind of thing.
He just does himself. He just plays himself, but in a good, in that way where he's got a very good on-screen persona, and the film just really makes the most of it. So a lot of action, a surprising amount of gore, but not too much in the sort of CGI or green screen stuff.
Is there much connection? Because we brought it up in the last. When we talked about it, this being a sequel.
Good. Yes, I mean, because we haven't seen the first one. It is. I mean, everywhere it's listed as being that. So it's not any kind of spoiler. And basically, Badland Hunters is it's post-apocalyptic, and he's not really a hunter, to be honest. It's just that some religious cult comes to the little, very, very typical sort of collection of huts, kind of badland, wasteland settlement type thing, where he's always being pursued by some elderly woman who's trying to tempt him with booze. I mean, that's about as deep as his character development gets in the film. But the young girl, agrees to go off with this cult to go for a better life, and it turns out the mad scientist, blah blah blah. But they're living in like the ruins of an old like apartment block. So I don't know if that's the one from the first film, because the first film.
It's kind of from what I've read, it's when everything breaks down, isn't it? That's
but it's the present day. Yeah. Whereas this is there's no sci-fi tech, there's nothing like that. Yeah. But this is clearly supposed to be far in the future. So zero reference to characters being from the first film, and if they did, then the world has very, very quickly gone from whatever kind of disaster to basically a desert. So I don't think it can. The connection must be thematic, I suppose, but there's no references to it or anything. So I don't know, but I'd still be interested to see the first one enough, because it sounds quite fun. But no, I don't. Put it this way: it's not going to impede your enjoyment. Yeah. There might be more you'd get out of it if you know what the disaster or whatever has happened, the apocalypse has been. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think seeing this would spoil the first one either for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoyed that, much better than I thought it would be. So I would definitely recommend that. Next up, a horror from Thailand called Home for Rent, which is a new one as well. And so my pronunciation of Thai name is going to be worse than my already not very good pronunciation of other language. But Sofon Sakta Visit. No, with apologies to him, because I'm sure he's listening. But he's a fellow who wrote Shudder, which is a fantastic film. And he directed.
That was a kind of one of the real breakthrough.
It was
kind of Thai horrors, wasn't it?
And it got remade in the US by the Japanese director who did like Infection and stuff like that, whose name escapes me at the moment. But it's a weird choice for a remake director, and it was a very bad remake anyway. But he also did stuff like The Swimmers, and he wrote quite a lot of other Thai horrors, both from that period and sort of coming up to it. So I've heard it's pretty good. Cub, the director I worked with, said it's very good. He recommended it to me. It's a true story about a family moving into a new home, and guess what? Like, strange things seem to happen connected to the previous inhabitants. There's a very young daughter who sees things, tells her dad, but nobody believes her.
Of course not.
It's 1 hour and 4 minutes, but sorry, 2 hours and 4 minutes rather. So that's the downside. But it seems like a lot of these recent Thai films are almost exactly the same running length, because there's been a few other ones added, like The Whole Truth and The Murderer. Both are too long as well. Like I haven't dived into them. I started watching The Murderer, but I fell asleep, so it was a bit dull. It was supposed to have been good, but it takes me completely out of it, because it's about like an expat Western guy who gets accused of murder, and it's kind of odd tone, but the guy's acting is not awful. And it's that thing where you get English language acting in an Asian film, and it's so distractingly bad that it just completely takes you out of watching the film. But both of those are by like Visit Sasan Santian, who he did part of 10 Years Thailand as well. But I don't know. It's interesting to see Thai horror. I don't know if we could say coming back, but in the early 2000s there was quite a lot of Thai horror, especially post Shudder. There's a lot of good anthologies and whatnot. So
I mean, he's got quite a career now, hasn't he?
Yes,
because he's going all the way back to Tears of the Black Tiger.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Citizen Dog, which I remember quite liking.
I remember both of those. I remember both of those fondly. Yeah, especially.
But then more kind of, obviously more horrors. Kind of since then, which is interesting actually. I thought he had a nice eye for sort of comedy and kind of more kind of cult, kind of playing around with sort of.
Yes, and I think The Murderer is supposed to be like that, because it is quite colourful and kind of a over the top lurid way, but just the acting just couldn't. I couldn't stomach how bad the actual acting was, and it wasn't an actor I'd ever heard of or knew anything about, so I suspect it might just been some real local expat. I don't know, man. I don't know, but I think I will check out Home for Rent since it's been recommended. I just need to find a time where I have 2 hours and 4 minutes to spare, which isn't that often, really. But we'll see. Okay, from Taiwan we've got Lost in Perfection, which apparently used to be called Love Is a Bitch, and the name was changed. So it's a true crime one, but filtered through melodrama by the look of it. It's based on a real case from Japan in the 70s called the Konkatsu Killer. Her real name is Kijimi Kane, and the script was kind of based on her. She was also referred to as the ugly femme fatale. So this is kind of about like a news reporter whose father falls foul of a romance scammer who's also been accused of murdering her last few boyfriends. But from whatever, I haven't seen it, but from what I can gather from people's reviews and trailers, it leans very much into the melodrama side of it, which doesn't make it sound too interesting. To be honest, it's directed by Sin Yin Sung, who did On Happiness Road, which won quite a few prizes. So. I don't know. The poster is so dull for this as well, and the trailer's so dull. Everything about it looks kind of beige, and just people's faces, not even looking over the top melodrama or hysterical. So it just looks pretty middle of the road. I don't know. I'm not going to give it. It's interesting that it's on there, just because it doesn't seem like that obvious a choice. And we'll get on to more Taiwan stuff, because obviously there's been a lot as we've said a few times, been a lot more Taiwan stuff seems to be landing on Netflix.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially horror and some romance stuff as well. So this one just seems somewhere in the middle of it all. But I don't know, I'm just building up the content library, I guess. Or since Netflix is becoming more popular in other countries, maybe what we're seeing is just some of these titles are just filtering through as part of that. They're not, you know what I mean, they're not acquiring it for the Western market. It's on Netflix Taiwan rather.
Taiwan, yeah.
And so we just get some of the stuff filtering through. Maybe it was very popular getting the clicks out there, and so some of them filter through. I suspect for some of these films that might be the way. I mean, just even some of the other ones from around Southeast Asia I'll mention. The same I suspect might be true for some of these, because I was going to say The Last Wife, which is a Vietnamese one from 2023, which, I mean, it looks fine. It's based on a novel from there about a young girl who's forced to marry an older governor who already has 2 wives because they can't produce children for him. So,
it sounds very like The Third Wife.
Yes, from what again, I haven't seen it, but I read the reviews. Apparently, it makes bizarre references to it. So I'm not sure in what way, because this looks handsome production values, blah blah blah, that kind of historical drama. But apparently, it's got some really weird bits of awkward comedy in there, which kind of take you out of the film. So I don't know. I'm not really that interested to see it, because again, it's fairly long, but it's interesting as well, and it actually got a release in US cinemas and Canadian cinemas, this one. So, I mean, not over here, by some company I've never heard of called 3388 Films. It's a new one. New one on, and if we don't know it, then nobody knows them. But yeah, and it's a Vietnamese-American director called Victor Vu as well, who has been making films for about 20 years, though I hadn't really heard of any of the stuff when I looked through his filmography. So yeah, it sounds like it's fairly solid bit of commentary about the rich versus the poor, but it's still essentially a historical melodrama in there. I don't think there's too much going on. So yeah, if you're into that kind of thing, it's probably not a bad thing. But I suspect it must have been, because it was very popular in Vietnam. It did well at the box office, so I suspect that might be another one, like we just said with the Taiwan film there, that it might have just filtered through as a result. And same for the next one too, like As If It's True, Filipino film, 2023, and it's similar kind of thing. It's a sort of drama romance. It's directed by a fellow called John Rogers. It's about an influencer and a struggling musician who seems to set up a kind of, not fake relationship, but a relationship based on boosting their profiles and everything online. And apparently it does get into not dark territory, but some mental health issues and exploitation relationships, not in a sleazy way, but just back and forth and everything. So it doesn't really sound very interesting, but the only interesting thing about it, apart from the fact, as we say, it is interesting to see these different countries, Asian title, different countries actually appearing on Netflix, which we weren't getting much of before. But it's another one like in the line of so many films I think coming out from Asia seem to be social media themed. These days we've had quite a few from Hong Kong. Even when you think about from Taiwan, and we'll get on to another. Bridge Curse, I think it's Bridge Curse, the new one we're going to. Sorry, it's as usual as Roper Bridge. But most of those are based around social media one way or the other, like young influencers doing this. So this seems to tie into that, kind of thing. Again, just exploring whether it's in depth or not, the relationship between social media and real life for younger people, the younger generations. So I think it ties in with that trend and everything. But again, as a romance and everything, it's not necessarily for us. I think if it was a big award-winning one, then maybe. Although having said that actually ties in neatly to just completely undermine what I said for our next one, like Past Lives. That's a romantic drama. Again, it's an award-winning one, but it hasn't made me want to see it. So I will watch it because it's so talked about and everything. I kind of feel like it's odd that working in the sort of Asian cinema area, haven't actually seen it, but I don't know, it still doesn't seem interesting to me. It might just be the way the trailer is or what people say about it. It seems like there's going to be a lot of staring out of windows, if you know what I mean.
You love staring out of windows.
Oh Christ, that was that one I saw recently,
All of Us Are Strangers.
All of Us Are Strangers. So much staring out of windows, train windows, rain dripping down the windows. My flat here, right, I've got like a great view, right, over Canary Wharf, big sort of balcony door window. I never stand there with my hands on the glass, looking out as if the rain is my own tears. I've never done that, but this is so many. Anyway, going off on a ranting tangent. It's coming on 14th of Feb or 15th of Feb, so maybe it's a Valentine's Day thing. But it does seem very much like one of these sort of wistful, bittersweet looks back about two people who almost came together many times but never did come, that kind of thing. It's not really my bag, but it's interesting, I suppose, just because it had a lot of awards talk, but it doesn't seem to be picking up anything, and it didn't really get so many nominations at the Oscars. Not that the Oscars are
kind of yeah.
And that director's new film is going into production soon as well, which is possibly one of the other reasons why this is added now, just to, her name's out there for quite a few different reasons. So anyway, past lives, yes. And now the main event, the Bridge Curse Ritual, which is a new one as well. They're just blurring together, and I have seen them all, and I will dutifully watch this. I'm actually quite looking forward to it for no reason other than I may as well watch another Taiwanese something curse film. And it is, again, it's about another. And I'll read out the plot thing. It's very short and it doesn't make too much sense. An architect disrupted the school during construction and turned it into supernatural entities. I don't know why they turned the school into supernatural.
Oh dear!
Years later, an augmented game involving dark rituals happens when a group of students unleash a swarm of evil spirits into the world. So the augmented game happens, or I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of questions after reading that synopsis, and that's the Netflix synopsis too. That's not from the sort of classic
back of the Hong Kong DVD
exactly.
era.
I've not cynically gone and found a badly written one just for gags. That is what's written on Netflix. But as I said before, it is again tying into like influencers, AR games, and everything. So it's very much part of that. But yeah, they're just all blurring together, and it's mostly the same guys writing and directing the Bridge Curse and the Rope Curse. And the Bridge Curse, I thought there was more entries. This is only the second one, though there is a video game called the Bridge Curse Road to Salvation, which I'm not going to look out and try and find it. But it's interesting enough. It's Lester. He did the first Bridge Curse, and he worked on some of the Rope Curse stuff, and it's the same writers, and they did the writers also wrote the Rope Curse 3. See, the words rope and bridge now are just losing all meaning to me, just even in this very short bit. But the Rope Curse 3 I didn't like very much. I think these films are generally pretty solid. And the Rope Curse 3 was the first one I thought, they weren't even just ticking boxes. It was about like not just an influencer, but a indoor parkour influencer. So he goes to the haunted hotel and jumps off walls a lot. And a couple of his friends dress up as ghosts to try and scare him. And it turns out there really is a ghost in there, and it doesn't really do much. And most of it is indoor parkour, which I struggle with outdoor parkour too. I mean, probably because I'm not exactly athletic, but indoor parkour, I don't. I mean, you think about parkour, right?
I didn't even know there was such a thing. Surely that's like going to the gym and just jumping over a.
Yeah, there's not much space. Exactly.
Running up the ladders and jumping over one of those horse things.
No, I agree. So it's anyway. So my review of the Rope Curse 3 will be up on easternKicks soon. But I didn't really like it very much. But I don't have I won't say I've got high hopes for this Bridge Curse one, but I'm definitely going to watch it, and I'm reasonably well disposed towards it, even before I see it. So you should dive into some of them sometime, or at least one or two, and just see what you think of them, just from the point of view of them clearly representing a pretty substantial part of Taiwan's horror production.
Yeah.
Which is, without going off about it too much, it's making it very difficult to fund any kind of other horror films in Taiwan. Anything has to be kind of these very youth oriented, with some sort of tech or online angle, because we're working on a film to shoot in Taiwan, and the investors out there, that's because these films are low budget. Obviously they're for the Taiwan market, but again, because of the Netflix connection they're getting out there, they want more stuff along those lines. So if they keep, which it looks like they will, they'll just keep making these kind of films over and over again, then at some point the curse bubble is going to burst. And we'll see what comes after that. But yeah, that's it for Netflix. There's nothing else really they've got listed as being upcoming. I would say Netflix are getting slightly more, not random, but because they're picking up a lot more content, or a lot more things are filtering through now. So a lot of things, like, you know, with Past Lives, appear a lot quicker than they used to. Just in terms of the window from when they're announced to when they actually appear.
Yeah.
You know, before you'd get the odd one still, like Three Body Problem, which I'm sure will be one of our next episodes, because they're about a month away.
Yeah.
Just over a month away. So some things are announced very far off, but in terms of the films, it's quite random in terms of how stuff is actually popping up, which
I'd agree.
Which is okay. I don't have any kind of problem with it, and it's interesting to see some of the greater range of stuff. But this also might be kind of the tail end of the huge production lull we had in the States and in the West due to the actor strikes, the script strikes. Yeah. So that might be another reason. So we might get this for another 6 months or 12 months while everything catches up, and then suddenly they'll be back to just some of the usual Netflix junk they put on there. Okay, Amazon. Right. The first one to talk about just briefly is Expats, which I haven't seen.
Yeah.
The reason being that they're doing their
weekly drops.
Yeah, I don't
think everybody holds back until the whole thing's in, so you can choose when you want to.
I'd be very surprised. I'd be very surprised if people don't do that. But then I
can see weekly working when you've got something that everybody is watching and wants to watch. And, maybe it's when you had your kind of Game of Thrones era, or
I suppose
that makes some kind of sense, but I think
But they're written around that though as well. They're written around cliffhangers. They're written around stuff. Whereas a lot of these other ones, which they're doing weekly drops with, aren't written that way.
Yeah.
So you get to that. That's the other. I mean, I don't watch them in the weekly way because it's too annoying for me, and I'm too used to just watching stuff. But the other reason is because there's been a couple of ones which I think have probably been okay, but then I've just tuned out because they don't end in a cliffhanger. So there's nothing which massively draws me towards remembering to watch the next episode.
Yeah.
So they'd have to be pretty good to do that. And this Expats doesn't sound very good. A lot of the reviews have been pretty scathing.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say there was quite a bit of controversy about the shoot as well. At least some of the more fact-based ones we can say rather than rumour, and just in terms of the fact that she was allowed to shoot and bring her crew along during the heaviest part of the lockdown in Hong Kong, which kind of riled up local people, understandably, quite a lot, including opening shopping malls for her to go shopping and things like that. So there's other rumours about stuff, but these are the parts of. There's a few things like that which you can see wasn't a good look, I think, at all. And I'm guessing that's the reason it's not on Amazon in Hong Kong, because it's kind of. I think it's annoyed people. And I think other things in it as well. Some of the interviews she's given, she said some pretty weird things. Oh, nobody speaks Cantonese in Hong Kong anymore. It's all Mandarin now, which. It's definitely not the case. And saying how dangerous, but she felt safe because she had the good old Hong Kong police guarding her and everything. Again, something Hong Kong not being safe is a nonsense anyway, but also the idea of saying something which is going to, for better or worse, is going to divide people in Hong Kong, whether you're on the side of the government or not. And the way it deals with the riots as well, they're just some sort of throwaway thing, mention of like hooligans in the streets. So I can see why it would rile people up a lot. So it's got some okay reviews from some American critics, but those reviews aren't really helping because they're praising how exotic it is. So that's not great. You know what I mean? There's nothing there. I am going to watch it, and I will already, because again, the same as Past Lives. It's an event. I think I should be part of the conversation, and maybe it'll be good. But I saw this scene, which is becoming quite, what do you kids call it, virals on memes?
The viral, yeah.
When Nicole Kidman dancing in a Kowloon noodle bar and in a sequin dress and her bare feet and like Heart of Glass is playing and like, no, that's not really likely. Taking your shoes off and dancing bare feet? No, that's not a good idea. And they're just trying so hard, certainly in that scene, just to be a bit Wong Kar-wai, a bit Chungking Express, a bit Fallen Angels. So... No, and you can see some old local woman in the background just looking aghast. People have zoomed right in, you can see her face. She's like, yeah, goyo, deal. Yeah, so, anyway, I suspect we'll come back to it after whether both of us take the Will it or not? We'll see. I'm committed to watching it when it's all available, and I will write about it. And may rant about it again. We'll see. We'll see. In terms of older films, I've not actually found too much more appearing, and I have delved in quite deeply. But I did find Zoo Warriors, the original. They're not the remakes or anything, and it's definitely legit, and it's definitely HD.
To quit.
Exactly, it's definitely full on HD. It's the proper version with the redone subtitles and everything. What's interesting, and I don't quite know the answer to, is that it doesn't have any reference to make it seem like it's the Eureka release, which is up there from Eureka. It's all Fortune Star on there, so I don't know how things like that work in terms of rights, which is quite interesting. But it's definitely legitimate. There's no way it's not like somebody else has uploaded a version of it. You can tell it is the real thing.
It depends, because it could be. You would think that if it's Eureka, it would say Eureka on it.
Exactly,
because would have uploaded it.
But maybe they just don't have online rights, because there are other ones.
They did. Because we had it, of course. Because we had it online for.
I shouldn't forget that. But you're right. You're right. So I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that. But it's good to have it on there. And I'm sure people have seen. If you're listening to this, you must have seen Zoo Warriors. But it's. You can watch it. You can never see it too many times.
Well, indeed. Yeah.
A rare case of actually as well. I'm going to highlight a new mainland film, a newish mainland film, which is on there. Called The Fallen Bridge from 2022. It's kind of a crime noir revenge type thing where like a bridge collapses, they find a skeleton, and then there's the dead guy's daughter starts to investigate it, revealing some dark secrets and everything. But it's from a female director called Yu Li, and she in the old days of Chinese Visual Festival, she was someone actually we wanted to bring over.
Okay.
Not she hasn't done like massively great stuff, but she's got a pretty interesting body of work. She did Lost in Beijing. The Fan Bingbing one, which got controversy because it has a bit of a nipple slip in it. Very, very, very brief and from the side. Not that I looked it up at the time. But that was controversial and she got into trouble. And Buddha Mountain, she got into trouble for as well. That's a very good film. It's very, very dark. That's a really good film. And Double Exposure, which was kind of an attempt at doing not a Western style, but like a genre film in a Chinese kind of context. So it's pretty interesting. And this film, The Fallen Bridge, it has got quite a few awards in mainland Chinese festivals, but they're mostly student festivals. But I'm guessing that doesn't mean that they're festivals run by students. I think it's a different thing. Whereas if we said over here there's a student film festival, we would assume it was students.
It was, the films were from students. Yes.
Exactly. So in China, when you have a student film festival, I believe it's student organised and run. Because this is not. She's born in like 1972 or 3, so she's not a student unless she's gone back to university. Sorry, in which case I apologise to her. I'm not casting any aspersions, but we are getting quite a lot of these kinds of films from China. I think over the last few years. I think especially since stuff like The Looming Storm back in 2017. Quite a lot of these.
How long ago now?
It is. Yeah, I know. I was thinking.
Really? Yeah.
So I saw it at Tokyo Film Festival, the premiere.
But you mean in terms of the sort of noir kind of stuff, because I think you can be, and even the latest one from our Ripples of Life man as well.
Shujin,
which is.
I haven't seen it, but and
again is another
noiry detective-y type.
Yeah,
one,
but I felt at that point, and there was lots of stuff around that was like that, like What's in the Darkness and all these kind of films.
That's right. Oh, I remember that was a good film.
But I felt like it was a way to get around certain other issues by doing a kind of weird noir that maybe has some bits that don't necessarily completely make sense, that you're confusing. Well, the way to put it, but you're confusing the senses to go, oh, I've no idea what I'm reading, so I'll just sign off it.
I think that's definitely part of it, and also the noir genre to an extent is not too bad a fit for some of these, not sensibilities, but ways of making the films, because in essence most of these ones are about exposing corruption and things from the past and everything, which the Chinese censors or government has never been too against the idea of, he's exposed, like this was a corrupt official who killed someone's daughter like 20 years ago, now he's been exposed and brought to justice. So there are, you don't have to get into too much of a moral grey area with them, but still can tell quite a dark story. And if you're exposing corruption which is not being directly linked to the CCP now, then I don't think they're against that.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I think it's both. And you're right. I think some of the other ones, what was that one, Back to the Wharf, things like that. That was a weird film, but again around a noir investigation. So yeah, it's a mini boom at the moment in those kind of films for the last 5 or 6 years. But quite a few art housey type directors have delved into it and stuff. I mean, she's not again like Yuli's not really an art housey type director, but this is probably reasonably interesting. I think it was one. The reason I've heard of it, not just because of her, because it was quite highly anticipated in China, and then it didn't really make as much of an impact or splash as people thought it was going to be. I'm not sure if there's a story why, but it was released officially. There was nothing. I never read anything about being banned or held back or anything. So anyway, there are a ton of other mainland ones as usual being added, but I'm not getting into those online. Made for WeChat, made for iQIYI, those type of ones, because it's just too many that we would spend the entire podcast talking about them. We wouldn't know who the directors are, the stars are. Not really keen on just pure CGI. Anyway, the only other funny thing to mention is an old documentary which has appeared in it called Jet Li, Lethal Weapon. It came out. I'm sure it came out on UK DVD many years ago.
Probably did. It was the height of the kind of Jet Li Western crossovers and
I when this is 99, so it would tie in. It's not a million miles away from Lethal Weapon 4, which she was in. So
and then he started getting more.
Yes,
more there.
Exactly. I don't know. I'm not going to watch. I just mentioned it because it's a funny name.
Lee. Yeah, and it's a very strange name.
Okay, cinemas and festivals, and I think the main one to mention is the Moon Thieves, which is coming out. It will be out by the time people listen to it. It's got a couple of special Chinese New Year screenings, and it's coming out 24th of Feb from our old friend at Central City Media. Yeah, it's another. I don't like calling these films boy band flicks because they're not actually about a boy band as such, but there is such a movement in Hong Kong where you're getting boy band members like into films, and as a way I think of attracting in younger viewers, which is it's absolutely fine. Hong Kong's always had a tradition of like singers, popular singers, so it's not. I don't mean they're boy band films in any other way apart from the fact that they're built around them. And as usual, it's another one with Mirror. We seem to mean it. So we've got 3 members, and I'm not familiar, so I did write down the names. We've got Anson Lo, who we have seen in a couple of things. He was in It Remains, and he was in a couple of others. We got Eden Liu, who's in Chilly Love Story, which I didn't see, didn't look very good, and Kyung To, who was in Mama's Affair, which I also didn't see, but did play. I can't remember where it played. It played some festival.
Including Asian pop-up.
Right. Okay. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of it from. But I didn't see it. But yeah, the 3. So it's got 3 of the Mirror boys in there, and I think the last fella, Kyung To, plays the bad guy, and he doesn't seem to have done a great job of it, because apparently I read a couple of reviews for it, and they say from the Mirror band, if you're into that kind of thing, he's kind of the ultimate sort of boy next door type of one. He doesn't seem to have shaken that for a villain. I mean, it's not that it's going to be like a hardcore film. It's kind of a caper, a heist caper about some kind of old antique watch. It looks like another kind of like Breakout Brothers type. That kind of it's not a heist film. That kind of ensemble caper type of thing, which is obviously Breakout Brothers were incredibly popular. And I can't actually remember what we screened. Did we do 1 and 2, or just 2, or just 1?
We just did number 1, I think. We almost had the option of doing all 3 of them.
The trilogy, yes, that would not really have brought in the fans over here, but they were hugely popular over in Hong Kong, so fair enough. But this is directed by Yun Kim Wai. He's the producer, director, co-writer, and everything. He I've not really known much of his work. He did Heaven in the Dark, which was a sex harassment drama, and he did Legally Declared Dead, which was a good film, and I reviewed for easternKicks with Anthony Wong. It's another take on that, The Black House, Japanese one, which also had a Korean version, and I remember thinking the Korean version was the best one. It's to do with like estate agents and lawyers and murder and a couple of grisly homicides which are unsolved, and this is pretty good. I get it mixed up in my head with Death Notice, but Death Notice is funnier and crazier, but this is still pretty good. Legally Declared Dead, but yeah, this guy. The other reason I remember his name is because he ran into some problems last year. And like something about like a music video which he plagiarized from somewhere else. I don't know if it was a mirror video or not. Maybe he stole.
Maybe that was a settlement.
Yes, maybe he like copied up one of Mirror's videos and
they said, "Right, okay, we'll let you off if you direct our movie."
Another thing about him is that it's his first film without Karina Lamb for I think she's been in all those films or something for a while because they were married and now they're divorced very recently. So, so there you go. But it's a Lunar New Year film, Chinese New Year film, and it's that kind of slick looking. It's probably pretty fun. I'm sure it's kind of like a 3.5 star film or anything, but I think it's probably a quite enjoyable bit of fluff. I guess you could. So if it's easily in a cinema near me, or if we get a chance to review it, I'll take a look at it. And I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned last time there's Perfect Days.
Oh, the Vin Vendors. Yes, that's right. That's coming out, yeah.
So, yeah, Wim Wenders doing a Werner Herzog. The other interesting thing is Evil Does Not Exist, the new one from Ryosuke Hamaguchi. Best known for Drive My Car.
Yes. Yeah.
Which has a preview, probably by the time you listen to this podcast, there's a preview middle of February.
Yeah.
BFI South Bank. And then they're doing screenings at the beginning of March, but they've been relabeled from my catalogue as being preview screenings. They're doing a hell of a lot of them because they were down as a release.
That's right.
But the actual release of the film has been pushed back.
Yeah.
From March to April.
Yeah.
So it's got a very strange situation for the film. I guess, whatever goes in the BFI catalogue stays in the BFI catalogue.
Well, yeah, that's true. There's not much they can do. They can really do about that, but maybe there's just some release schedule conflicting, or maybe they're hoping it'll win something at the Oscars. But
it's not up for an Oscar, is it?
Is it? Oh,
I don't think so. No,
I'm sure you're right. I didn't.
And this is from our good friends Modern Films, isn't it? But
yes,
they kind of stuffed the release of Drive My Car, considering that did win an Oscar.
I would say definitely, but with this film as well, and same as Drive My Car and some of the other ones, I don't really get this. In general, because obviously it played at London Film Festival, right? I had quite a few screenings there.
Yeah, at least 2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah. And then, so you already covered quite a lot of your market, because it's not likely to be a breakthrough film to in a mainstream sense. And then you have all these preview screenings.
Yeah.
And then you have the release. Anyone who wants to see it will have seen it, unless they really just don't want to go to the BFI. I mean, in London, obviously. I mean, and nationally around. But I assume it's probably playing other... If it's previewing the BFI, it'll preview at other places.
I think it'll be those previews.
GFT.
I think other previews around, even in London, even before. Christ. Well, there's a bit of an odd situation, and I mean, considering that, Drive My Car. I'm getting these figures from Box Office Mojo, but Drive My Car got $46,000.
That's terrible. That's really...
But actually, none of his films have done... Drive My Car did well outside of the UK. Got up to about $1 million in France. And,
right, okay.
I think had okay business in the States and so on. But probably most people were releasing it off the back of being nominated for the Oscar or winning the Oscar. Whereas, like I say, they released it too soon to actually really make anything out of that.
And they released it too soon in terms of coming just after the London Film Festival screenings, and also still when film festival season's in full swing. And the people who, I guess, you're kind of more mainstream audience who you might get a bit of crossover with, they'd be film festivaled out by that stage. Because London Film Festival is just incredibly expensive. Anyway, so you're not maybe in the mood.
You need to save for a few months to be able to afford to go out to cinema again. But in terms of box office, generally he's not exactly.
No.
So it's an interesting. I mean, it's a good film.
Did you prefer? Is it better? I haven't seen it. Did you prefer to Drive My Car, which I haven't seen?
I prefer Drive My Car.
Okay, I haven't seen that either.
But as you say, I mean, there are quite. It is quite a. It's there's no. Best film in the world, it'd be very unlikely for this to have the breakthrough success of something like your Parasite.
But the name might trick some people in. Evil Does Not Exist. That's a pretty good name. and you might think it's a horror, or not a horror, but something like a dark. It sounds like a kind of Park Chan-wook type thing, or is it? I'm guessing it's not.
Yeah, not for most of it.
What's that?
Not for most of it.
But it's a darker film. I mean,
yeah, there is. It does come into it.
How long is
surprising. It's
because Drive My Car is a
3-hour film. Although, to be fair, it never felt like 3 hours. But this is 106 minutes. He said.
Oh, okay. But okay, so I'll watch that then.
Yeah.
Just because I haven't seen any of his films because they're slow.
Well, since Happy Hour. You watched Happy Hour, didn't you?
Happy Hour, right.
Yeah.
No, I liked Happy Hour. I mean, it's a 5-hour film. I was fine with it. It's just 3 hours I don't like, and unless there's a very good reason. And Drive My Car, the trailer just looked ponderous, to put it mildly. And again, I'm not criticizing it in the same way I'd criticize without having seen Past Lives, because with him, I understand that he's a very good director, and it's just not my thing. That kind of bit of slow cinema and whatnot and everything, it's just not my bag. But I can understand he's a very good filmmaker. So if this is less than 2 hours, then I'll give it a shot, and then yeah, sure. We'll see if I actually get a preview of it somewhere. I don't know. It is not just in terms of the weirdness of you effectively undercutting your own release by doing so many previews, but is that maybe the point that they don't think they're going to get many screenings for it for the actual release, so they're top loading it, and this is actually the release.
It's an odd one.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, but to be fair, the BFI was going to be a release that when they screen a film, it wasn't going to be.
Yeah, that's true.
Preview screenings, but they've had to retitle everything.
Yeah, you're right. So that's true. It's
Ray,
maybe
we've
wasn't
got 20
by
preview screenings this week in every one of our cinemas.
It might have been a miscommunication or a crossed wire. That wouldn't surprise me, knowing both Modern Films and our good friends at the BFI.
But I think that's it.
I think that's about it. There's, we've just finished our Chinese New Year screening, so that's nothing else on our side. I don't think this is kind of a bit of a lull. I guess we've got Glasgow Film Festival starting, at the end of February, start of March. But apart from that, it's a fairly quietish time now.
Yeah,
because we've got Berlin coming up, so that people don't clash with Berlin, and we've just had Rotterdam. So for UK, a lot of those films would be interesting to see how many of those get programmed around the way. From Rotterdam and Berlin. So yeah, we're at that kind of start of the festival calendar, award season coming up kind of time. So interesting times ahead, or not. I don't know.
So that's it for now. Yeah. Don't forget you can find all of our previous episodes on Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe now and you'll never miss an episode. But for now, cheers!